All right, good morning. It's Huntington's disease Todd here. This is a topic that's going to take a little bit of time. I've thought about saying this for some time, and it's just it's a little bit more complicated, so it'll take more time to explain. But it talks about how does life change after you get the Huntington's diagnosis. But a lot of times you could even talk about how does life change after you get some bad news or you get a devastating, information. So from that standpoint, I'm going to try to share a little bit of both. But the one thing that is paramount is I'm talking about Huntington's disease, of course. And the Huntington's person changes more. The Huntington's family changes more in dynamic than almost any other diagnosis you can get because it affects you in so many ways. So, I'm going to talk about those ways that you change, and I'm going to try to cover them all. But it goes from the mental part of it to the emotional to the physical, and then as you get down the road a bit, like I am, then you start having the memory lapses and all the things that come along with that. But one of the things that happens early on is you have the mental symptoms of just finding out. So you find out you have Huntington's, you get mentally challenged right away as the person that has HD. And then the person that is the spouse doesn't totally understand what Huntington's patient's going through. So that's mentally challenging too, because you as a person that has it, you're mentally challenged by the fact that you have it. You're going through all the emotions of trying to figure it out. What on earth's happening? What's my life going to be like? How am I going to do this, that, and the other? How am I going to provide? How am I going to be how am I going to live out through the rest of my life with some kind of dignity? How am I going to prepare? How am I going to do those things? Now, when you are the individual that does all those things in your life and in your family, it becomes very daunting. But at the same time, now your spouse, the person who doesn't have Huntington's disease, your kids, your caregiver, they don't even have a clue what's about to hit them or what's coming or how you might change. So for them, it's a roller coaster too. And I know that in the very beginning of this process, Wendy and I made some giant changes in our, in the husband-wife relationship in the house, or the who can do things and who can't. Who she's had to take over some of the chores that I might have done. So that just that one thing right there, that's a giant change. So when you get Huntington's disease, I would say that the first part of it is the mental challenge, and that mental challenge is so deep that it could take hours to go into and explain. But on the shell or on the top, the main thing is that you mentally change in the beginning of this disease to the point that it's not really hardly anything you can prepare for. But now that I'm down the road a little bit, I can tell you something about it, so maybe you can prepare a little better. Maybe you can get a little bit more insight early on. Maybe get some help with some emotional counseling. Maybe get some, into some outside groups, things like that. When we first got this disease, I was working as fast as I could to try to get down to a certain point of, things. Wendy was working. We were a bit separate, but the dynamic in our house from then till now has changed dramatically. Sometimes Wendy gets a ladder out and goes and does things that I would have never, ever expected her to do. However, she's a strong woman, and I don't doubt that she can do it. But the things are so different. Now, again, so that's the mental challenge. And then you as you get through that part of it, you start going into the emotional part of it. Now, the emotional part of it becomes where you start changing. The person that has it starts changing. Gosh, the way we are, who we are, what we do, what we think, how we act. I used to be the calm, keep it together, people influencer, the guy that kept all the balls in the air and kept everything organized. I was the one that would calm down my wife if she was getting upset. I would try to play intermediary with the kids. I would keep people happy in the contracts that I was trying to get written for houses. I had a very, what you would say, I had a winning personality. People liked to see me. When I came into a room, it was, oh, wow, Todd's here, And I don't say that in vanity. I only say it from the standpoint of being so much different. So emotionally, you go from that strong person that you were, the person that has it. Your spouse is used to having that strong person that you were. And then you have to come to grips with that. So then you start getting into the emotional part of it. Now, the emotional part of it can cause you to become recluse. So then you become recluse because you're emotionally and, having issues that nobody can really explain. And, if you were to, so, maybe you drop out of some of the social things. Maybe you don't go to the parties that the realtors have. Maybe you don't go to the open houses. One of the big things I used to like doing was going to Parade of Homes. It's a home show that they do. They do them all over. But in our town, they do shows, and some of the nicest homes are on exhibit, and you can go look. That was a favorite thing for me to do. Even through the first 3 or 4 years of Huntington's, 5 years maybe, I still enjoyed doing that. But even then, I would go to those. Wendy didn't always go to those. Sometimes she had to work on the weekend or whatever. So, but let's just say I would go to those, and then I would literally make a point of not running into the builder or not running into the realtor. Now, I knew all of those people, but it just became a point where, I didn't really want to explain anything about what was going on with me or where have you been or anything like that. So that's so you go through the mental challenge right up front. Now you're getting into the emotional part of it. And all these things cause you to be different. You just can't help it. Nobody can change what's happening to you, and you can't change it yourself. Now, you could get counseling. Sometimes with Huntington's disease, counseling isn't really going to be a big issue. I mean, it's not going to help a lot, maybe early on. But sometimes when your mind starts changing so dramatically, and again, your mind changes without you having any ability to control that. It's not like, and now maybe they're going to come out with some medications that'll work better or some things like that. Sometimes, though, if you take medications, it just dumbs you down, and then you become, less of a person than you would be otherwise. I currently am not heavily medicated, therefore I can communicate a little bit differently. And again, I always have the caveat, I'm sorry for people that have Huntington's way worse than I do. There are people that are struggling with the chorea and the movement and all that. So you've got the emotional, you've got the you've got the mental that comes on, the emotional, and then that emotional mental thing starts causing you to be less of a more of a recluse, but then that also causes you not to be able to be financially productive. Again, if I just kept going to a job where I had to stuff items on shelves, I could keep doing that. But when I had to keep going to a job where I had to meet the public, I had to be 100% on all the time, and I had to, be the go-getter, breadwinner, and the peacemaker, the person that would bring things together. I was heavily involved in church. I was involved in a church bus ministry where I would pick up, the little old ladies at the nursing home and bring them to church. All those things kind of fell by the wayside when I found out about this. Now, fortunately, the way it happened, I quit doing the bus ministry prior to the Huntington's disease, but I also went into prisons, which I may have mentioned. That had to stop because I wanted to get prepared for Wendy and our financial situation. So I did drop out of that. So those two things, if the mental, the emotional, then there's going to be the financial. I mean, the financial that's involved in those, but then you've got the physical. The physical part of this thing, it can come on early or late. It can come on strong or weak. But right now, I would say in that regard, physically, I don't have all the traits of someone worse than myself. However, I've seen photographs of myself now in some situations where, my canter or my gait or my stance is not the same as it used to be. Early on in my life, I seemed to have hunched over a little bit in my shoulders, and I never paid attention to that much. But now I notice in even how I stand, I've been in a couple of photographs where we've been to my brother's funeral and my mother's funeral. But okay, so then you start having that physical part, and that physical part can hurt some people way more earlier on than it has me. But even myself, I'm starting to become less confident in my walking. I walk in the mornings, as I told you, and those exercises are real. They're paramount to my life. But those physical changes start making less comfortable, if you will. There could be a time that I go out walking and I fall down, and whenever that happens, I guess I will have to stop. If I trip on the sidewalk, there's a chance of that happening. Oh, I've slipped off my feet already. I was working on a project one day, and I was trying to tear a metal leg off of a wood table, and I had my foot on the wood table at the same time I was trying to tear that leg off, and my foot slipped, and I fell right down on my face. And I'm having a little bit of trouble with my teeth, as you might have seen before, but my bottom tooth, I hit it. It was hurting at the time, and I hit it right there when I fell down on my face. I'm not laughing at anything or anybody. I'm laughing at myself. But the reality of this is, this disease can cause you to do some goofy acrobatic things that, most people don't do. And a few years back, when I was getting out of one of those low Adirondack type chairs, I had trouble getting out of that, to the point where I got rid of that. We don't have Adirondack chairs anymore. We have the kind that are more straight up. So then, you've got a spouse that's going, heck, they're watching from the side going, what the heck's going on? Or how long will this, they're thinking about too, emotionally, what's going to happen next. Through all this, though, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, that we don't ever stop loving you. You don't ever stop loving us. We hurt feelings, I'm sure. I'm sure I hurt feelings almost every day. I don't have the ability to control what I say. And things come out of my mouth now that would have never come out before. That's the way it's going to be. Now, you have to get a little bit stronger skin. And we've talked about this a little bit in other videos. So how does life change after you get Huntington's disease? I would say it changes dramatically, and I would say it changes early. I mean, I don't know many people. Now, if you find out when you're younger and you're still working and you're still capable of pulling some hours, and my sister has it. She found out when she was in her 40s. She works in a selector type job in a warehouse. More power to her. She's going to try to work as long as she can to build up some, retirement type money. Trudy is her name. For that regard, I say, go. And I mentioned before too, finding out early might give you more time to do more fun things or whatever. Try to do things before you get to the point of, the devastation. So early on, when I had the mental part of it, getting into the emotional in that beginning stage, I still had the desire to do things with the family. I still had desires to, go to events. I still had the desire to spend a lot of time with my grandson. That worked out in the best way possible. He was born, a few years before I started dealing with this. So all that being said, life changes dramatically with Huntington's disease. And don't let anybody tell you how it should change for you. You have to be the guide of that. And I'm not talking about just the Huntington sufferer. I'm talking about the Huntington's family. If you have to retire early, or if you have to get into Social Security early, or if you have to do things like that, do what you have to do, because, sometimes when a person's had a financially successful career, there's more opportunity with the Social Security system to get higher benefits if you get involved early as opposed to waiting till later. But Huntington's disease is a huge challenge, and it changes your life dramatically. So from beginning to end, even the first day you find out, it can start changing, how you think. Sometimes changing the trajectory and changing the direction is not a terrible thing. This is the longest video I did, and if you made it to the end, I appreciate it. But this is an important topic. This is about the whole dynamic of your household. You, as the person that suffers it, you're going to go through some highs and lows. And like I said, in the beginning, it gets mentally challenging, emotionally, but you kind of level off in the middle few years. And then it seems like now I've come to some clarity of knowing all those phases that I went through before. I wouldn't have had this clarity 10 years ago. I wouldn't have been able to even say these words because I didn't understand it to the degree that I do now. Having Huntington's disease for some time, it does kind of give you clarity. And then I don't know if I said this or not, but then you get into the point where you start having these mental gaffes and mental breaks in your mind, and that becomes super embarrassing. I mean, as a human being, I went to a store one day and I was trying to tell the guy that I wanted a lag bolt. I could not remember what a lag bolt even was, so I said to him, I want the bolt that screws in, and then it has the shaft. And he almost got indignant with me because I didn't know it was called a lag bolt. It's not his fault, and it's not my fault, but it just puts you in that other embarrassing situation where you go, well, maybe I'll avoid that again. Maybe I'll write down what it's called before I go there again. Maybe I'll put off going there. People can hurt your feelings. I can hurt your feelings, and then other people can almost hurt mine. My skin's getting thicker every day. This is Huntington's disease, Todd. This information, I hope, is very, very helpful to you and your family. This is a longer video, but it might be one that, you get everybody to sit down and watch, because I've been there, done that, and I'm finally able to talk about it. Go to my YouTube page, like it, and subscribe, and then share it with some other people. The reason I did this was so we could share this information to people that are just getting involved and may need to know. So, Huntington's disease, Todd. It's a Sunday. God bless you and have a good day.